Hi everyone, my name is Greg Holman. I'm one of the software product managers here at Formlabs. Today I'm going to kind of walk you a little bit through our software platform. We don't often talk about software, or we don't talk about it enough maybe is the thing. So I just kind of want to walk through our bigger platform, our different workflows for SLS, SLA, and then some key takeaways at the end. Hopefully you'll learn a little bit here, some things you might already know, and we'll keep going. So first of all, three main platforms when we think about our software. We have the PreForm system, we have firmware, and then we have dashboard. PreForm being everything to get you from a digital file all the way through to a part that can be printed on a printer. Then you have the firmware side, which is on the printer. It's everything to kind of move the motors, start the heaters, all that fun stuff, plus anything that's on the UI. So if it's priming and you're going through all those checks, that's all in the firmware. And then dashboard, that's all of our monitoring software. That includes everything from our fleet control systems all the way through to print monitoring, history, material usage, things like that that you would use on our dashboard. So we generally like to think about that as our software ecosystem, and we're trying always to get that closer together so you guys can have that kind of one experience throughout the entire thing. So today I'm going to mostly focus on the PreForm side. As you probably noticed, we did put some new features out recently, so we'll talk through some of them. But we'll start with the SLA side. I'm going to go through some features that are kind of key to your workflow and might give you some ways to improve your workflow and overall improve your efficiency. And then we'll walk through the SLS side. So on the SLA side, on PreForm, the first thing you always do, you import files. So we're really excited to announce that in the next few months we'll be adding native CAD import files. So yes, that's if you use CATIA, if you use Creo, SolidWorks, bring those in, but also step files. We get a ton of requests for step files. So now you'll be able to bring those right in from your CAD program, and you won't have to transition them over to an OBJ or a 3MF or an STL. So that's really exciting. That should be coming in one of the upcoming releases. Should make your workflows a little better. Next, you're going to do the orientation work and kind of get everything ready so that it's ready to print. But one of the big things that we added recently in October was model hollowing. So model hollowing will make it so that you can reduce resin consumption. Your material consumption will go down, which is great. It's great for you guys. But there's also other benefits, like reducing the number of touch tips you have. So you can keep those Class A surfaces as Class A surfaces. So you'll have fewer touch tips. It'll be easier to remove the touch tips at the end. That's better. You'll also be able to reduce your print time in some cases. So those big chunky parts, hollow them out, reduce the resin consumption. You'll have faster print times and fewer touch tips. All value add for you guys if you are printing on those larger, chunkier parts. Next thing we added was drain holes, because whenever you hollow your parts, you're going to see the whole thing light up in orange like that. You're going to have this big cup inside of it. And you have cups in many other situations, and that's we can set you up with a settings optimization engineer, and they can talk through cups with you for probably over an hour. But generally, it's just the concept that the liquid inside the resin has to be able to move in and out, and you don't want to build up pressure. So one way to reduce that is to add drain holes. So many times, our users were saying that they were going outside of PreForm. So what we've been trying to do is make PreForm a one-stop shop. So try to turn it in from this thing where every time a user wants to do something different outside of these normal orientation, support, and sizing things, they don't have to go outside of PreForm, take their file out, bring it back in after they're done with it, and do it that way. So we've added drain holes as well, and drain holes make it so that you can relieve those cups and keep your printing going, and it will make it so you can print faster when you have cups. Just as a side note, if you don't want to add drain holes, there's also the cup mitigation mode, which can be found in the print settings editor, which is a new feature we added, I think earlier this year, I would say, in probably Q1 or Q2. And the print settings editor allows you to edit some of those knobs. That's one of those options that you can turn on cup mitigation. It will slow your print down a little bit, but you'll be able to print with cups still. And in most cases, you'll have a pretty reliable outcome. So cool. The next thing we released is labeling. Labeling was a big one. A lot of people are asking for labeling across all the different segments. Everyone has the same kind of use case there, though, right? You're trying to improve traceability. You print something. You print a bunch of things. Let's say it's teeth, right? You print all these different teeth on a build platform. They all look like teeth on the other side. You have to take that, and you have to be able to sort them on the other side. So being able to add the text to the parts themselves within PreForm rather than going back out to other software is super valuable. So we added this feature to be able to emboss or engrave your text onto your part. And one neat thing about that is that we decided that your initial condition for the label is actually your model name. So one little story there, actually 2 days ago, one of our engineers came up to me, she goes, hey, I really love this feature, and here's why. I printed a spine, so she printed a human spine for Halloween. It was part of her costume, and each one of the parts inside of it was labeled by the vertebrae number, and she needed to keep them together and in order. So she actually was able to, in one build, in one shot, just hit on each one of the parts because they all retained their model name, and she could do it all in one and then press apply, and it was quick and easy just by naming it up front the correct thing that she wanted to be labeled. You can, of course, go back and change the label names. We have that ability. It's super flexible. You can change the depth, change the size. It's really a really fundamental tool that will help you guys speed up your workflows and be able to sort those parts at the end. Cool. And then on the last one, so part texturing. Earlier this year, we put out this tool on our website that was called Meshy. I don't know, did anyone use Meshy? Meshy was on our web tool. It was great. I see a few hands. And it made so you can add a texture to your parts, and then you can import them into PreForm. We were seeing a lot of usage of this feature, so we decided to bring it into PreForm to make it so that you guys can add that production-like finish to your parts, those production-like finishes that you often see on like injection molded parts. So you can add them within PreForm. We gave you guys a library, so you'll see in the GIF on the side that there is a library in there that you can choose from, but you can always also add in your own PNG or your texture map that will be added to the model. And you can change the amplitude, kind of how far out it sticks, how frequently the texture kind of continues over your model. It's a neat feature that will help you get that final finish that you're looking for. And we're kind of excited, we're really excited for you to use it and see what kind of textures you're using for those different models. So that's a lot of the SLA workflow. We put a bunch of these features out to make your workflows better. Hopefully they're making everything a little bit faster. Those are the new ones. Then when you go back, it was probably like middle of last year, I think, that we added the brush support tips, right? So we added this concept where you can edit your supports using a brush tool. Back then we had been asked about like, hey, why don't you guys have a paintbrush? So we added this feature where you can add or remove your touch tips using the brush. This allows you to bulk edit your different support touch tips without having to go in and onesie-twosie them or use the box drag. So this should speed up your workflow when you're going from either direction of, many times the workflows we'll see are, they'll start by supporting all minima and then they'll add using the brush, or they'll start by supporting all and they'll remove using the brush. So those are the workflows that we're generally seeing, and the brush allows you to take a large area of those supports and add or remove them to speed up that print preparation process. So, cool. Now we're going to jump over to the SLS side. On the SLS side, there's a few new tools on that side as well that are very SLS oriented. I want to note that the tools that I just went over are both for SLS and SLA, except for the support touch tips side. SLS, beautiful, no support touch tips. I'm slightly biased, but that's a different problem. So on the SLS side, we are adding a few new features that are just SLS based. So first of all, yes, you still import those models, but we're going to be adding part grouping and folder imports. So when I say that, I mean that you can take a folder on your desktop, you can import all the files inside of it, whether they're STLs, OBJ, step files, import them all. They'll import, as you can see on the screen, right into a folder inside of it for organizational purposes. So it'll go in there, it'll keep the name of your directory, it'll be in your folder so you can manage your parts. Because on SLS, we're printing more than 5, 6, 7 parts a build. You're often seeing 100 parts, 200 parts, 50 parts. So it's a little bit harder to manage your model list. So we've really taken time to start helping you organize that model list so you can better understand what you're printing and how you want to manipulate it. So that'll work for all your different CAD file types. It will not work for form files right now, but it will work for everything else. The part grouping also extends beyond that, and you can use it in general by selecting your parts, right-clicking, and adding. This will be out in, I think, one of the upcoming next 2 releases. Next, orient and lock. Many times I talk to customers, they don't know about the locking feature, say, hey, I really want this surface to be up, but I still want to use packing. How do I do that? So when I look at it, I say, well, okay, you want to orient your part first, and then you want to lock it in that position. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to orient it. Use the little manipulator. You can, I don't know if you guys know this, but we added a snapping tool for the manipulator. So you can snap it to every 15 degrees by holding the shift button. This is a long-awaited feature as well. Small one, but it's a quality of life improvement. And you can take that orientation then, and you can lock it one of 4 different ways technically, but really 3. Lock the XY plane. So you lock it so it can only spin about the Z. Just as a reminder, the X plane goes across the front of the printer, the Y goes into the printer, and the Z goes up the printer. So you can lock it just in the XY plane, so it'll just rotate around. You can lock it in the X, Y, and Z. So you're going to be able to have 0 rotation, but you'll be able to translate about the build chamber. And the third one is complete locking, so no translation, no rotation. And the benefit here is that you're setting a number of constraints on the system itself, on that part. So when packing happens, the packing algorithm will take that and it will use that as part of its constraints for putting these parts together to get you the most efficient packing job possible. That packing algorithm is one of our great things. We'll talk about that in a minute, but these rotation and these snapping and model locking tools are ones that aren't used by some users because they're less discoverable, but it's a really important part of the workflow, especially on SLS. A few different use cases here. One, when you want the XY scaling, you're going to want that often, or I often use it when I have circular things like these gears. I want the gears facing up at all times, the circles facing up, and I want the gear edges also facing up. So if you use XY scaling, it can rotate, and it won't rotate around the XY. But on the other side, if you want XYZ, you might want that in a case where you're doing nylon 11 carbon fiber, and you have directional strength there. You want to make sure it's not rotating about the Z either. So you're going to use XYZ rotation locking to make sure that it's keeping the same rotation, the same orientation that you've chosen, but it will translate around the build chamber itself. Just a few little tricks there that we like to use when we're kind of looking at what we should be doing when we're setting up a job and how to make it easier and faster to set up jobs and use our packing algorithm. Cool. Next, part cages. So part cages are a feature that previously you could only get in Magix and NetFab, really. Part cages are actually right here. They look like this, and they're the idea of taking small and fragile parts and putting them into a cage so it's easier to post-process. So many of you guys, if you run SLS machines and you've printed small parts, you know it's a pain to be post-processing all those little parts. You lose them, you have to count them, and in that process, you're spending a ton of time. That's real active time of an employee or of yourself or someone to actually do all that post-processing. Putting them in a cage makes it so you can cut a lot of that time short by doing everything from sifting it. So I'll often just tap it against the bottom and shake it around. A lot of the powder will fall right out. And then throwing it right into the blast if you have a blast, or using a blasting cabinet to blast through it. These, actually, there's some of these back there, but you'll see these have been blasted once by glass beads, and they are really clean. At the end, what you'll do is you can break them open, just like that, and your parts come out, and the cage itself is a consumable. You can toss that away, but you've saved yourself significant time and effort that you can spend doing something else at that point. Next, packing. Packing is a great feature. Packing saves you guys a lot of time probably. Anyone that has used either PreForm as of last year, like probably 3:15 or something like that, last November. I think it was last November, 3/31, we put out the new packing algorithm, which is lightning fast relative to the old one, and a much better pack job. So packing makes it so that you can take all of your parts, get them as tight as possible, and increase your packing density, which when you think about packing density, you always want to compare that with your refresh rate to understand how much excess powder you're dealing with. This can all be found in the print report, which is a tool. If you have questions about that, you can grab me after and we can talk about it. But the excess powder is the thing you're trying to avoid. So you always want to try to bring your packing density as high as possible to compare it to the refresh rate you're using. So using the packing algorithm, you'll be able to do just that without actually doing any extra work of manually packing yourself. We are continually improving this And it's, you can pack with cages, you can pack with groups. As I said before, the locking all works with the packing as well. So that's kind of, those two work really well together. And then finally, printing. So printing on the Fuse side, we're going to be adding an improvement. Some of you probably know that we added fleet control for Form 3 and 3L probably about a year ago, a little over a year ago. Fleet control is this concept of being able to manage your fleet or manage multiple printers using our dashboard interface. And you can, what you can do is you can send your prints right up to the cloud. The cloud will slice them, and it will add them to a queue. That queue can then distribute those jobs to any available printers. An available printer is a printer that's ready. If you print on Fuse or you print on the Form side, if your printer says ready, that means you've primed it. Priming, if you've used a Form 3, we used to have priming. We did away with priming on that side. Fuse still has priming. But once you get to that point, the job will be sliced. It'll be shipped to the next available compatible printer, which is great because it's going to save you time. So you can, when you're sending up the jobs are smaller, so they'll take less time to send to the cloud, freeing up your computer. So your computer, when you're slicing, is grabbing a ton of your resources. So it's grabbing your RAM, it's grabbing your CPU, and it's taking all those resources just to get the job done. You've probably all experienced it on larger jobs, especially if you print on like carbon fiber or you print on nylon 11. So imagine going from that kind of waiting period to being able to ship it right up to the cloud in a matter of seconds and letting the cloud deal with all that time. And then when it gets up there, it ships it right off to the printer, to the next available printer using the remote printing functionality. So that's going to be a big improvement. We're looking to put that out in the next, probably in Q1. And we would love to kind of get your feedback on how we can continue to improve and make this more usable for you guys as we try to grow that system and grow the usability for your use cases. So these are the big features that we've put out over the past few months. Most of them, just as a reminder, it's CAD native imports, step files. That's all coming out in the near future, not out yet. Then you have hollowing, drain holes. You have part labeling and texturing. Those are the big ones that went out this past October, just a month ago. And then we have the support touch tips that you can brush on and brush off. On the SLS side, you have the part grouping and model folder imports, which should be helpful for anyone that's managing orders or managing large volumes of different types of parts. And you'll have part cages. Part cages is really helpful for those people, like I said, printing small and fragile parts. You can also use it for big parts. We've seen use cases where people want to combine big parts for it as well. And then fleet control, packing, and that rounds it out. So those are the really exciting features. One thing I do want to note is keep giving us feedback. So last June, we put together, we put this little button in PreForm. Some of you maybe have noticed it and clicked it. That button will bring you to a survey. We do read the results of that survey. Actually, it goes to a Slack channel. Many times engineers will read it, and we try to take that feedback and help that drive our roadmap. So we're taking that feedback and using that as part of our case for building features. So just think about the questions that were in that survey, which were, hey, what features do you want? And then think about the features that we put out last month. And there's a clear correlation to things that you guys wanted, things that we knew the market wanted, and how we can deliver the best experience for you guys. So the more feedback you guys give us, the better experience we can drive for you guys as we're trying to develop the right thing at the right time to make PreForm a one-stop shop for everything you guys need. So cool. Thank you guys for the time, and hopefully this was helpful and informative. Feel free to poke me. I'll be around.